People power. So I had to do it. Yeah, really excited about the session we have right now. We've got a really strong panel, and everybody's got a little bit of a different slant in terms of approach to surviving and thriving around digital transformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the individual speakers up, and we're going to sit, and then we're going to go through the different presentations, and then we'll offer a time after everybody's done their presentations to do the Q&A. All right, so just kicking it off, if you guys could come on up. We've got Sina, who's coming from YOKE, Tony from Ntegrity, and Mark from Acorn Brands. So give a warm welcome to these guys. And we've got a clicker here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello. Welcome to the panel. I'm really excited to be here and have been invited to this event full of creative, intelligent, digital designers, and where all you're from. So my name is Sina. In case you can't see me, that's actually me. I'm a digital strategist. And if you haven't detected the accent, I'm actually German. Mm-hmm. I've been around in Australia for 3 years now. Lived in the US and in France before this, and I call myself a business person. So I have an MBA by education, I'm a marketer at heart, and I also love technology and data. So I hope this qualifies me to talk a little bit about business transformation from a digital angle particularly. And I work at YOKE. So YOKE is a strategic consultancy delivering creative and digital communication solutions. And everything we do, and here are just a few examples, needs to live up to the idea of creative intelligence. We need creative intelligence to drive business transformation. So, not to fill you with an hour of TED Talk, that's not my aim of introducing this panel. I just want to have a few slides to prompt the current state of business transformation, particularly from a digital angle. And I want to challenge your way of thinking about digital business transformations, and also say that it's not actually that hard. You might be surprised in me saying that, but I really mean it. So I believe that we all live in this world of constant growth, change, Silicon Valley, startups. It's exciting to be part of this innovative world, but a lot of businesses are lagging dramatically behind. So the first group of businesses out of 3 that I'm going to sort of walk you through, I call the laggards. Because I'm German and we're known to be quite harsh, I will also call them the dead. So the group of dead businesses are dramatically behind in implementing any innovation. They're part of these 67% of Australian businesses that just don't have the right culture in place to even start thinking about innovation from any angle. So, dear dead businesses, I've got some news for you. We have to start innovating because the world around us is changing, and we start consuming things like media in a digital format. What I find also shocking in my profession is that the laggards of the world just don't innovate and start having this problem of be disrupted if they don't disrupt themselves. Also, as I introduced, I'm a big fan of data. The laggards of the world are scared of data. They don't know how to access it, they don't know how to analyze it, and particularly don't know how to act from any insights that you can gain through data. And let me ask you here in the room, when was the last strategy that you didn't have a measurement plan around, no technology to actually capture some of the user behavior? You don't really know what goal you're working towards, and you just simply have a good idea, do it, and never look about the outcomes of it in a data way. So let's move on to the second group of businesses, the try-hards. So I believe I've met a lot of ambitious people throughout my career with a fantastic vision that I find very inspiring. The reason the tryhards are also the barely surviving is that actions are a lot better than words. While vision is essential to have and drives what we're going to achieve as businesses, we also need to implement those and to get some help around us to actually fill up some of the resource and knowledge gaps to drive innovation. It is a digital jungle out there. Things are changing. New things come around the corner all the time. So it is essential to keep on growing yourself, attending events like this, self-education, and we can't just rely on things happening in the innovation curve without us actually proactively going out there and seeking that. But let's not forget some of the basics as well. The 101 business basics of branding in the digital space is shocking in Australia. There are so many examples of brands that we love as users and consumers. We go online, and if we find any presence at all, we're having a terrible user experience. I'm being quite harsh here, but it is the reality of things that the digital space gets neglected in implementing a lot of the ideas that businesses have, which are really great. So to get back to the point of how do we actually become from being barely surviving tryhards to the third group of businesses, I believe we need to stay hungry. We need to keep on learning, and just as a few ideas, and talking from my personal experience, I did an MBA here in Melbourne, and I believe the word digital was mentioned about 4 times. I find that scary. If the leaders or the next generation of leaders in education is not actually being educated for the world that we live in. There are some more agile education providers. I'm involved with General Assembly as just one example. And there are universities that are trying to shape and becoming a lot more involved with industry experts that are closer to these topics. And it is a responsibility that we as industry experts have to give back some of the knowledge that we are fortunate to gain and working throughout our experiences. So let's move on to the third group, the savvy operators. I also call them the thriving. So the thriving are the ones that are doing. They're not just trying, they're also doing. They're failing and they're trying again. They're the ones that have a vision and implement it in the best way to actually become a reality. They're also humble and they learn. They're also not afraid to sometimes just go back 3 spaces. And one example that I want to talk you through, which I'm sure we'll have more in the panel discussion, is to actually challenge the status quo. What about your business model in the online space? We all know Airbnb has changed the way we book accommodation. eBay has changed the way purchases are made. Netflix has changed the way we watch television. So I challenge everyone to not be afraid to go back 3 spares and just think about, is actually what I do, my 40, 50-year-old business model, still applicable in the online space? So have a robust strategy and the right technology and drive innovation. As a last thought to sort of introduce the panel as well, I believe in measurement and data and things going up and down, but we need to start having a shared language with the entire businesses. In my little niche of digital marketing, I'm sure Scott will be able to relate to this. We talk about these click-through rates, whole budget spend, more keywords, cost per click, bounce rate. But if we stay in this sort of nerdy language and metric system, we are failing to translate our innovative ideas to other business decision makers. So I need to start talking the right metrics. I need to start talking average customer value, revenue, number of customers, customer satisfaction, cost, and start really being able to translate my ideas to business decision makers. Also, I'm not afraid to use the nasty word profit. This is when all the puzzle pieces come together and we're actually creating value and we're able to tuck away some of that growth to reinvest in innovative ideas. I can stand here a lot longer and talk, but I won't. So feel free to have some further reading on some of these ideas on our blog. And I thank you, and I'll hand over to Tony for some more ideas before we start discussing.
Thanks, Sina. Hello. This is going to be a bit of a challenge because I usually talk with my hands. So I've got my notes in one and my clicker in the other and microphone. But g'day. My name's Tony Lee. I'm the Strategy Director for Ntegrity, and we're a digital transformation and consulting specialists. Here is an obligatory parade of logos and clients that I've worked with in the past. And I've had an enormous pleasure working with these clients over my 18-year career. I started my career when Yahoo was still the #1 search engine. We were still working with 56 kilobytes per second internet connections. And I think Malcolm Turnbull was actually, he had the biggest ISP. So not much has really changed since then. But Adobe tells us that over the past 2 years, there's been more changes to the marketing landscape than there has been in the last 2 decades. So we've seen over the last 2 decades the revolution of internet advertising transforming from websites to banner advertising to search engine marketing to social media, then content marketing, then native advertising, then ads marketing, mobile marketing, remarketing, growth hacking, and now we're in this kind of weird phase where we're talking about programmatic and automation, and we're being served advertising that kind of scares us. It actually knows more about us than our mothers do, which is really kind of creepy. But I've seen many, many changes. I've survived the tech wreck. I've just survived the GFC. I've survived Kim Kardashian breaking the internet. And through this all, it's really great that I've been able to work client side, and at the moment I'm working agency side. It's really great to be able to sort of work with a good family. And this is my family. This is the Ntegrity family. The picture on your left is our strategy day. So once a quarter, we go out and we talk strategy, we talk about the business, and we really sort of think about our goals for the next quarter and what we've achieved in the past quarter, and we really celebrate ourselves as a family. And it's a really, really always a very special occasion for us. The picture on your right, the orange picture, is us volunteering at the CEO Sleep Out. The woman who is trying not to drop my head is the beautiful founder and director of Ntegrity, Rishenda, who I love very, very dearly, and it might be inappropriate sometimes, but she inspires me every day. She inspires me every day to achieve and believe. And she really is the gel behind this great organisation, and has built a culture surrounding this notion of trying to solve the world, rid the world of what we dub digital distress. This is digital distress. Currently, the marketing tech is moving much, much faster than marketers can actually keep up with. So it's not happening in the education space as quickly. Graduates aren't being taught the digital skills required to really excel in the current climate. The industry has a skill shortage, which is very, very clear. I was talking earlier to both Mark and Sina about how difficult it is to actually recruit very, very talented digital strategists and digital implementers. And businesses, at the same time, have a great desire, a great need to actually develop into digital-first cultures, but yet they're feeling quite waylaid by the fact that they don't have these skills to actually help them. So Ntegrity has got a mission to solve this digital distress problem, and we do this through 5 stages. to transform businesses into digital-first cultures, we first take a lay of the land of an organisation. We look into the data, we look into the existing channels, and we like to inquire as to the types of resources that organisations have. And we provide what we know as an audit. Sometimes we call it a discovery. But usually when we go into these sort of scenarios and we present these findings, we usually get a lot of scared looks on them people's faces, a lot of this uh-oh moment is very, very clear in the auditing phase, but then we know that we're doing our job. We actually know that we're telling organisations what exactly it is that they're actually facing moving forward. And then we build a strategy. Our strategies are very pick-upable. We pride ourselves on that idea. But when we deliver a strategy, we hope to achieve that aha moment. The aha moment is really made evident when we present the strategies that are measurable, that have a results focus behind it, a very detailed plan around the strategy for each single channel that represents that organisation. And a plan forward. And usually we build our strategies for 1, 2, or 3 years so that there is a strong vision. And transformation does come from that catalyst, that vision. But this is where usually strategies break down. You can literally give organisations a playbook. You can actually give them a plan, a step-by-step plan. But sometimes organisations will pick up a strategy, focus on 1 or 2 points, and then the rest gets kind of put by the wayside. One of the things that we identified is this is an ongoing kind of problem. So what we've started to do is also try to plug in some of those gaps in that strategy. So we believe that if we show people how to do something and they see it, then they can start to believe it. If they start to believe it, then the strategy becomes more real. So the action phase is really, really important in this next sort of evolution of transformation. Sometimes we actually even consider putting in specialists. We put in strategists inside organisations to help them transform from within. We also offer a digital mentoring service, which is the next phase, the empowerment side of things, where organisations are upskilled in some of the skills required to implement this sort of strategy. This is when they really understand the power of what they're contending with, and when you teach somebody to execute the strategies, then you're in a better position for it to accelerate all the way through to transformation. And then once you reach that final phase, then we talk about that scalability. We talk about the what next. We whet their appetite by telling them how to do, teaching them how to do, and then they're always hungry for more, which is what we want. And here are some classic examples of some characters you'll meet in a transformation project. The dreamer is one of my favourites. It's usually one of those people, you can almost see the ideas, those cloud bubbles forming out of their head. They're usually quite loud and boisterous as well. They're usually a dominant character in the room. We do like the dreamer. The only thing to watch with the dreamer is that they tend to go off into tangents, and you just need to pull them back into reality. Sometimes it's so far in the stratosphere that it's really hard to bring them down, but really, really important to make sure that they're grounded in some form of reality. The dreamer can often bring along lots of followers with them, to the point where they just get lost in the whole sort of dreaming sort of behaviour, and they don't actually focus on the task at hand. So just something to be mindful of the dreamer. Really important character to have. Usually they're CEOs, which also becomes an interesting challenge, so you have to contend with those types of personalities as well. The rainmaker is probably one of the critical figures in a transformation project. The rainmaker is usually characterised by a very confident, very influential executive. She's probably more likely to have a lot of, it's like a quiet exuberance around her and a reserved power. You can usually identify these types of characters by those types of characteristics. But very influential, but in a quiet way, not a loud type. They're the ones that get things done. They see the solution and they try to make it work. And they're great consensus makers and confidence boosters, and they take people along with them on the journey. The rainmaker is a very important figure in transformation. Then we have the tinkerer. The tinkerer is somebody who's a bit of a perfectionist usually. So they see the vision and they want to interpret it in their own way. The tinkerer can often get lost in some of the details and also trying to perfect the solution. So what to watch for the tinkerer is just to make sure that they're on task and on time and on track. And then we have the keeper of the coin, which I all know you know. Whenever I show this slide, people actually ask me, why is he smiling? They never smile, but I guess I'm just an optimist, I guess. The keeper of the coin is usually the ones, obviously, they will charge the money, but to talk to the keeper of the coin, it's really important to get them on side. A lot of the considerations there are really one of rationalisation and just making sure that the decisions you're making are logical. The devil's advocate. Now, I know you hate this guy. We all hate this guy. The devil's advocate will often... If you ever find yourself actually saying, let me play devil's advocate, I want you to stop. I think it's a very important thing. We should just try to sort of weed out this characteristic in people. This doesn't actually help. The devil's advocate focuses on the negative. It's kind of like the antithesis of the dreamer. The devil's advocate focuses on the negative and can continue to focus on the negative to the point where it's actually no longer relevant. I recently had a devil's advocate that talked about, what about the 1% of people who are going to be upset about this? That is literally the definition of a minority, a 1%. So don't focus on the devil's advocate's arguments. The way to sort of circumvent that is to maybe use a little bit of NLP programming, talk to the idea of, Frank, that's a really interesting perspective. Let's maybe have a workshop about this, and then we can talk about how we might solve this problem. So can we see that? What does that actually say? That says the roadblock. Okay, so we know what the roadblock is like. The roadblock is there for a reason. Usually it's been done before, it can't be done, it's impossible. The roadblock exists to make challenges for us, which we then need to swerve around. So the way to actually work with a roadblock is to find a detour that is closest as possible in the eye line of the roadblock, so that the roadblock can actually see there is another way around this. The lost soul. The lost soul is actually a really important character. The lost soul are the greatest source of your followers. If you're a transformation agent, they are the greatest sources of your potential advocacy. If you can show vision, if you can demonstrate vision and bring the lost soul along with you on the journey, you've got really, really powerful advocates on your side. There are a lot of lost souls within transformation projects because change is scary. And the shruggy. The shruggy, he can go one of two ways. He can either be, his heart's either not in it, he's already moved on in his mind, or the shruggy is probably just going to go along with the flow. So the shruggy, it's important to really give tasks and direction that enables them to make those decisions and move forward with the transformation. But all in all, it's important that when we talk about transformation, it is all of culture experience. It's many people coming to you along with you on the journey. And it's not usually up to one person, it's up to many, many people to change cultures. But it is about making sure that you have a consistent vision and one that is articulated clearly, with the understanding that personalities will differ, and being intentional about the outcomes and the steps along the way. And I'll pass on to Mark at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, and hello everyone. My name's Mark Cowan. I'm the chairman and the founder, and also the head of strategy for the Cowan Group, which is a design group that specialises in retail and also in the food industry. So we do a bit of design, but really, sorry, we don't do a bit of design, we do a lot of design. We do a little bit of digital as it relates to those industries in which we work. And I suppose I was really intrigued about coming along today because as a business we've been through a fair bit of transformational change ourselves, and I'm really interested in, I suppose, in the question time and sharing some of those experiences with you. We ended up really pioneering being a specialist packaging design company in this country, and then expanded globally as a result of that. There were some other fairly transformational changes that I've been through professionally and personally, and they're always interesting to, I think, to share and to understand why you did those things, and I suppose it's important to know if those things worked as well. So looking forward to that part of it.
Yeah,
that was quick, no slides. Apologies for that if anyone was looking forward to them. It's a bit, feels a bit naked for me because that's what I'm usually doing, showing people pictures. But anyway, we'll get on to the questions. Thanks.
Very good stuff. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, guys. Some of the things that seem to roll up in terms of themes across some of what you were talking about. One is that transformation isn't necessarily new. Like Tony, even some of your examples within digital have shown like a huge amount of change over time, and Mark, your experience in terms of transforming a number of times in terms of your business. But you also identified one thing, which is a bit of a skills gap. So I wanted to get a little bit more of a feeling from your perspective in terms of what is this skills gap, and is it just a skills gap, or is it kind of a combination of skills gap and kind of personality gap, or kind of personal traits, that type of thing? So go ahead, whoever wants to grab that one.
So we run a digital marketing mentoring program, and every year we get university students to apply for this program. And it's always interesting to hear their perspective when they come to us. They talk about the fact that when they talk digital, it's usually done in modular form. It's like 1 or 2 modules, and it's done at a very sort of surface level. Would you agree, Sina? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that what's really sort of a problem there is that there's a great desire and a great interest. I mean, this is the millennial generation we're talking about. They are born digital. And the fact that we've got teachers not teaching this really sort of like critical business skill now. It's a critical business skill. It is all pervasive. I mean, some of our clients, we have breastfeeding clients and we have cemeteries. So it's really sort of like cradle to the grave. It's like you can't avoid digital. It's there throughout your life all the way to the end. It's so important that we're teaching kids these skills at university level, and yet it doesn't really exist at the moment.
Got it, thanks. And then more broadly, and Mark, we talked about this on the phone, so I'd love to get your take on it. How you go about business transformation and identifying that, like what to do next and that type of thing. Can you just talk to the audience a little bit about your experience in terms of how you've shaped your business over time and walk us through that story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing this for a long time, as you can tell by the grey hair. I'm possibly the oldest person in the auditorium, which is a tiny bit scary for me as well, to actually make that realisation. But so I started my business in 1987. I'm 55 years old, so you can do the math of when I started it. And we started off as an advertising agency, so a small advertising agency, and it was at the end of the 80s, so that was an interesting time because you could go and claim lunches on and make some tax-free. So it was a pretty interesting time. But then we went through the recession we had to have, and the clients that didn't go broke, we decided to go and resign the rest of our clients, and that was an incredibly scary thing to do. And become a more specialised business. So we'd always dealt in retail and in food, and so we decided to become a specialist packaging design agency, and there was no agency like that in Australia. There was other people that did packaging design, but they were more a generalist kind of design business. So I wasn't really sure it would work, and also the clients were used to moving around from agency to agency, and it was hard to get continuity of revenue. So it was really about jumping off the cliff and believing that you were right. And I don't know whether it was luck or good judgment, but it turned out to be right because we grew massively from then. So we opened up in Sydney, New Zealand, Singapore, Shanghai, Beijing, Ho Chi Minh City and London. And we work on many global brands. Our biggest office is actually in Shanghai. We've designed a lot of the brands that you guys would all use on a day-to-day basis. And I'm really proud of that. I really love making a difference. But the actual part of going through the change was incredibly scary, and at some stage you just have to jump off the cliff and hope that there's ground underneath.
What about, so even the previous presentation, but also you guys as well, talked a lot about culture. So how do you create a culture around business transformation and keep people along the way?
Yeah, culture's really important. And once you get a culture, in my experience, the people that enter the organisation, if they don't fit, if they somehow get through the process, they kind of realise they don't fit in the culture, and then they choose to move on, and that's when it's working really well. I have two kind of rules when I'm hiring staff, because I think that's the most important part, is like the people you bring into the organisation. The two general things I look for are talent. They actually need to be good at the thing that they're employed to do. It helps. And also what I would call attitude. And attitude is just, do they believe in the things that you believe, etc. One of the things that I did early on that was a mistake in retrospect was I tried to hire people from other businesses that I admired, that I perceived as successful. And I tried to bring in those senior people. And what I found is you have to be true to yourself. And if you bring in people that don't believe what you believe, they're actually not going to contribute to the organisation. And that was probably a really fundamental lesson, which I had to learn a couple of times for it to really sink in. But I think that's probably really important. Then to have a vision of what kind of organisation you want to create. Consultants are good, and at the end of the day, we four are all consultants. But the drive needs to come from within. You need to have a clear vision, work out what that is, believe in it, and go for it. And that's as true for culture as it is for what you want your business to achieve and what you stand for.
Cool. Tony, you guys have anything else to add?
Just to add to that, particularly in sort of some of the niche innovation areas where it gets quite complicated and skills are very technical, hiring for skills or talents is almost obsolete a few years later. I mean, there's a 3-month planning horizon in technology that you talk about. So hiring because you've got a candidate there who knows how to do a certain thing that you've got an actual current need for, it seems to be a silly strategy knowing that. So you have to hire somebody for the attitude and the drive to update that knowledge on a constant basis, which is the attitude. And the other component is also the flexibility and the love of change. Any transformation is change management. And if you ever picked up a book about change management, it's all about motivation and having the drive and the right culture. So there's a large component of that that's required for any education and hiring policies, I'd say.
Cool. I'll just add maybe that when organisations go through a transformation or a change, it's really evident. There's a lot of movement. If somebody is standing still as part of that movement, it's very, very obvious. So one of the things that I use to motivate people is I just need to remind them that change is inevitable. The organisation has already determined that this change is going to exist. This is the vision, that is the change. If people are going to stay still, they will no longer have jobs. In order to have a job, you have to move with everybody else. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, good point. Now, there's 2 microphones at the front of the steps here, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to walk up and ask a question.
Hi, thank you for sharing today. I'm Bowen. We come from the company called Operation, because our company is focused on bring the augmented reality and virtual reality to the business. So my question is about you guys in here. What you're sharing here is a lot of information about the digital content. And my question is, have you heard augmented reality and virtual reality? Do you want to bring the technology to your business to transform the digital content to the people and deliver this data to the different people?
It's funny, I laugh because I played the virtual reality game last night, zero latency. It was quite impressive, I recommend it. So virtual reality, I think the Melbourne startup community has quite a lot of ideas, and I went to a few events where that's a big topic, and I'm sure some here in the audience are really innovative in driving some of these ideas. I personally don't have much experience, so I can't talk about the expert side of things. But for me, as a marketer, it's always about what do consumers want? What do users want? It's definitely, as I experienced last night, a new way of consuming entertainment, for example, a new way that we interact with our surroundings. So clearly that's going to get picked up by businesses that develop strategies and transform some of their assets into supporting this new user behavior. So from that corner, that's how I would say it's just a transformation again of our world, and how businesses react to that is just another layer of new things we have to deal with.
I'd agree. I mean, I think that a lot of it comes down to fit for purpose and fit for industry. Yeah, I talked about the dreamer. Usually, ideas about virtual reality come from the dreamer. But, if you're working in financial services, it's pretty hard to try to figure out a place for virtual reality in a context that is current. So a great catalyst in terms of changing the game, in terms of new forms of entertainment. But yeah, most definitely fit for purpose. You have to find a reason for this to exist, and not just sort of put it out there because it's new and interesting and funky. You end up spending, it's a very expensive, I don't know if you've done VR, but it's really expensive, the equipment.
That's the thing I want to bring to the topic here, because a lot of people in here is the first time they hear virtual reality and augmented reality. There's another concept I want to bring to the topic. Some things people think is too far away, expensive, it has to spend long. Actually, it's not. Actually, we are just, at this stage, it's very achievable. And we already bring that to a lot of business, like Nike, Tesla, and have a lot of clients already use the technology to transform this stuff. So that's the reason I'm here, want to make some connection between you and us. You have a lot of digital content, have a lot of data, and just want to find a way to just deliver it to the right people. And we are providing this technology in this stage. So I just want to, if I can just share the contact after the conference, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, great, we'll talk.
Thanks. One question for all of you guys is, you've been involved either advising clients or Mark kind of going through transformation yourself. What are some of the lessons learned, specifically from maybe some of the bumps and bruises you've had along the way? Because quite often I think the audience would benefit from some of those learning experiences as much as when things have gone swimmingly. So Mark, share a couple bumps and bruises.
Yeah, sure. I think probably the most relevant example comes from, or I draw from the experience of when I was actually in retail. I used to be a national grocery buyer for Woolworths and for Safeway before that, before I started my business. And as a buyer, what you get to see is you get to see new products before they get launched. And then you get to see whether they translate into sale, into success, or otherwise after they're launched. And everyone hears about the rate of failure of new businesses, or of new products, etc. And the thing that I saw that was true of every single product that succeeded was it actually was really good at something. It had a point of difference. It stood for something. It wasn't just a different brand or a different marketing take on, I don't know, whatever it was, but it actually stood for something. And when we've done many startup brands for clients, and when you do those, the brands that succeed and the ones that are easiest to to help are the brands that have actually got a vision for how they're going to make a difference and how they're actually going to do it better. And those brands are the easiest to help. And the brands that are succeeding around the world today, of all the brands that we advise, are those brands which have some truth about them and which stand for something, and those that aren't just a commodity. So if all you're doing is you're providing a commodity, you may be successful at the moment, but you're in danger. Because if someone provides it cheaper or faster or in a more friendly way, in a way that you enjoy more, you're at risk. You have to actually have something that makes a difference. And if you have that, then you'll succeed. And that was the reason that we succeeded as a business, because we were able to do that. So I think that's my, wisdom as I see it anyway.
Yeah, cool. Yes.
I guess everybody here has heard of the word fail fast. So there's new things happening. Not every idea that everyone here in the room has is going to be a great one. Hopefully a few of them are. And we will go down pathways that potentially we'll realize this is going nowhere. It's the wrong idea, or it has been, reinvented, disrupted as we're going down that path. So I think when you do fail fast, bruise heart, but get back up and do something else. And I think that's a journey for a lot of businesses as well. When you are struggling with something, every business will, just change course, do it fast, be a bit, bold in saying, this isn't working, let's do something different, and fail fast would be my lesson learned.
Jump off the cliff.
Jump off the cliff.
I will add to that. I have the great privilege of having worked with Kmart and Cotton On through their transformations. And Kmart was an extraordinary business because it came to the Wesfarmers Group as a real basket case, and now it's the star. And that change arrived through being bold and intentional and fast, because transformation is very, very quick. In the example of the Cotton On Group, they actually have a motto in their organisation, which is don't let process get in the way of progress. So culturally, the entire organisation is geared towards being agile and transformative at every point of that organisation.
Great, thanks. Got a question?
Hey, my name's Hannah. I'm from the Federal Department of Communications and the Arts, and the federal government's not really known for its fail-fast culture. Slight understatement. So we're obviously going through this process of realising that it really is do or get left behind. And I was wondering if you had any advice that is particularly relevant for that government situation where privacy, security and reliability are absolutely crucial, but we still want to change with the times and really, if we can, be at the cutting edge of that.
I'll go. So I think that in a way, I think of government or local federal institutions just as another organisation. Clearly you have not the profit intentions as other organisations, but it is an organisation as every other. So the principles of transformations apply to you as they do to businesses that we have put in our examples that we discussed. I think, again, the idea of putting yourself into the user and into the consumer, or for you, the citizen, is really important. What am I expecting? How am I interacting? What you deliver me as a service, how am I actually gaining access to that? How am I interacting? And putting that at the center of the start of transformation would be, for me, the first step, as it is with every other organization, if that helps.
The dilemma that the government face is the same as that which businesses face, and it's really just risk versus reward. So to make transformation with any change it brings risk, and it's just a question of how do you manage the risk and get the reward. And that's the same equation that every business faces. If you have a business that's making money, and which the measure of success in a business is money, I suppose, the ultimate, or it's one of the measures. And success for a government is a different measure. I mean, money is certainly one of it, financial security of the country, but there's a lot of other measures that are much deeper and probably more basic than that. But it's still the same. It's still the same equation. And I think, when the minister was speaking before about putting together a panel, that's a really good thing to do. If you can put together some smart people that know how to take you through a process to try and get reward with minimal of risk. But the trouble is, every change involves risk. And you just have to know how to qualify it. And the other thing about risk, I think, is, and this may be, I don't know if this applies to a government as something as complex and big as that, but it's certainly how personally I've looked at business myself, is if you can accept the consequences of failure with the risk, and you think the reward is enough, then you do it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that talks about the way you may go about it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Cool. We've got time for one more question.
I'm 76 years young, so I started my own business 50 years ago. The transformations you talk about, are they continuous or stop-start? If they're continuous, don't you run the risk of never having a product that satisfies you because you'll be always thinking of something better?
Good question.
That's a really good question. Transformation is continuous, most definitely continuous. It needs to be. If you're talking about culture, culture doesn't stop. But in terms of when you talk about transformation and product, those are probably two different things. Products also go through their own evolution. Their natural sort of product lifestyle might change over time. But ultimately, transformation, the way that we look at it, is about being aware of where your customers are and making sure that you are engaging with them at that level and evolving with where that conversation is being made, where it's being held.
Yeah, my perspective on it is, further to that is just the starting point with any change is really what's the purpose that the brand or the product serves. There's a model which is used largely through the world, and a lot of the big corporate food companies use it, and it's called the brand purpose model. And so it forces you to articulate why that brand exists. Why does it exist? Not what it does, not what it provides, but why does it exist? As a business, we have a brand purpose, and ours is to influence choice, influence consumer choice. So what our job is, what we see our job is, and the reason we exist, is to help people make decisions about which brands they buy. And that's why we exist, so everything we do works towards that end. And, if you look at a lot of the big brands in the world, they all have a purpose. And if you understand what that purpose is, then it's really easy to make decisions towards that. I think Google's is to organise the world's information. Is that right? Something close to that.
Don't be evil. Don't be.
Yeah. But if you look at their brand purpose, if you come from that, then it starts to be much easier to make decisions. And at the end of the day, the thing that I think is really intriguing about businesses like Google and Apple and all of those businesses that have really transformed the world, in quite a fundamental way, is what was the point at which they made the decision that they're going to do it? And then to your point, it's evolved along the way. Like I still have never gone inside a Google, inside the business, which I'm planning to do in Singapore quite shortly, which will be fun. I want to see it. The closest I've got to it is looking at that American movie that talks about, working at Google. But, those kind of businesses have really been fundamental in changing a lot of things. I think Steve Jobs is a bit of a hero of mine for the way he's changed everything, including the way we're doing this presentation today. Because it's exactly the same way Apple did it. You just walk along the stage, and it's very fundamental. But I'd love to understand at what point did they decide this is what I want to do and make that kind of like left-hand turn or whatever it was. When did they decide to zig when everyone else was zagging, and how did they come to that point, and when did they jump off the cliff? That's the part that kind of like is really intriguing for me.
Cool.
I don't think that's an answer, it's just an insight maybe.
Yeah, that's cool. Our time's up. So I want to thank the guys on the panel for your presentations as well as your questions and answers. It's really insightful. And also thank you guys for asking your questions. Thanks a lot.